first of all, thanks Al and Deirdre and Alec for having me. I'm not a published writer, but I wrote. And 2 years ago, after living here for over 20 years, I'm originally from Belgium, Flanders, and I started reflecting on my life before America, as it happens after so many years, because in the first years you live here and you hunger for your old country and everything here is foreign, and after maybe 10 years your bed's here, your table's here, your job's here, your personality is here, and another 10 years later you kind of hunger for the old world. And if you're anyway inclined to write, well, you start writing about it. If you're anyway inclined to draw, you start making pictures or take photographs that remind you. Now these pieces came about that way, so there's a lot of autobiographical stuff in there, often more so by association of experiences and thoughts and encounters that then find their own way in little stories. Originally these were written as long prose, and I weeded out about 70% of all the words that were originally in there, and it's like a sculpture would chisel away at a rock and end up with, you know, lots of debris around it until he pretty much discovered the statue or form that was originally in there and that he brought out by chiseling away. And a lot of my introduction is all that, you know, debris I'm talking about, just to make it easier for y'all to sometimes understand these little stories. My introductions to these are much longer than the pieces themselves. They're really turned into poetry in a way. There's a lot of space between the words, a lot of room for possibility. So I'll read them slow and take my time on it, and I'd invite you all to do the same in your listening. Just maybe make some room and quiet to take it in and visualize. Okay. Now this first one is called Men in Tank Tops, and it starts with the first time I came back from America. After my first visit, I for the first time saw my country from out of the sky. I'd never seen it like that, and it's a very small country, and then you realize after coming out of a huge continent like America, how small this is. It's probably smaller than Georgia, I'm not sure. Apart from the visual, you also feel that you're elevated from your past for the first time. You don't take your family, the circumstances you grew up in, for granted anymore. You're detached from it, and that's where this starts with Delta Flight 125 that comes in over the North Sea at 8 o'clock in the morning. Delta 125 cuts through a wall of bursting thunderclouds under which Europe lies and ages and waits in slumber. The ribbons of orange rooftops neatly line up in patterns of utter boredom. And behind these dwellings, just below the belt, lie the shacks where all life begins. There's no time there for timely things like eating on time and sleeping on time and nice things straight and unsightly things slanted. Here everything was measured once and cut and nailed by the forces of approximation, chance, gravity, and wilderness. Old bread never tasted better than here. Yesterday's coffee reheated at the main house and brought back to the shack, where deep, dark sips go down like hot molasses before labor on the land begins. And hoe the spade and haw the rake, sweat soon streams from the pores of men ready to meet themselves in this fortress of shacks. On the other hand, the main house and its face belong to the wife and her pursuits. No blade of grass will remain between the tiles. A cast iron post in a concrete tub will adorn a front yard that will consist of rocks, stones, and marble mostly. Even underneath the tiles, the worms must remain underground. The stench of pesticides permanently stands guard here. But no matter how clean and finely curved the insanity of these lifeless facades, the shack cries out louder in its brutal architecture invented by men in white tank tops and hand-rolled cigarettes in the corners of their mouth. They take vacation in their street, away just far enough from the scattering noise of wife and kids and the machines at work. Alone with their thoughts and passionately driven by the uncertainty of life, they work harder even, hammering their nails and digging their dirt. A good shack never falls before its creator. Grandpa didn't wear tank tops. He wore button-down shirts and practiced the art of carpentry in white sleeves. On the really artistic days, he'd wear a colored shirt. And he would disappear in the shack behind Bertha's house, only to resurface with something of practical use, or a nice wood curl from his sander, or a garden full of flowers. And his little plate, yes, that too. He'd go stand on the balcony with his little plate next to the breadcrumbs he had spread, and then he would tick on that little plate with a butter knife until the birds came. And they always came. They knew the breadcrumb call, and I would stand there as a little boy and watch the magic of it. And Grandpa would then turn on his heels and smile at me from under the thick rim of his glasses and point at the Delta 125 overhead as it cut a slow white line on its way to America. All right, one more. I think we're ready for your first set. We'll be going back and forth.
Thank you. Hi. So as Al said, I'm going to be translating some Arabic poetry, and I'm from Lebanon, so I chose for today 2 Lebanese authors, one of whom is kind of considered a very important and influential author who wrote in Lebanese Arabic, which is kind of, some people might say, untraditional, unorthodox, to write in the spoken language as opposed to standard Arabic. And his name's Saeed Aqil. He actually died a couple of months ago at the age of 102. So this is very timely, yeah. So I'm going to be sharing with you one of his poems in the original and then with my translation. And then I'll move on to more contemporary, more modern poet called Suzanne Alaywan. And she writes free verse, and I just recently discovered her and kind of fell in love with the images that she creates. So I'm going to start off with just reading the Lebanese Arabic, and I just ask you to kind of listen to the tone and then listen to the tone in the translation, and because you probably won't get, there are no cognates or anything that you'll recognize, but just listen for the tone and, okay. So it's called هني بحبهم. هني بحبهم بس انتي كتر ما تجمع بعينيكي حلا من قبل ما بهالكون كنت صليلك صلاة ولما ندحرجتي عشلقة شي نجم عن ايد رب ملخجني وعم يوجعك انك حلم وما كان بعد يلتقى ولازم بقى تلعب معك لقوطة نتفة من الفجر ومن لون خدك هالنقي هالقال للشمس شهقي ومن ريف عينيكي اللي عم بوعي الدهر وعملت شي اسمه الزهر بركن ذاتي بقلب وردة تلتقي. Okay, so this is, I haven't translated the title for this one because it just kind of repeats the first line, and so this is my rendition. Them, I love them, but you, with all that cluster of loveliness in your eyes, from before you were in this universe, to you I offer a prayer. And when you did somersaults on some star's beam, tumbled off of a god's hand, and it hurt you to only be a dream, when there was not yet a lily to be found to play with you, I plucked a bit of sunrise and a bit of color from your fresh cheek that told the sun to eat its heart out, from the landscape of your eyes that wakes time, and I made a thing called a flower. Maybe if I lose you, I can find you inside of a rose. So that is the Lebanese Arabic. And I don't know if you'll be able to see any difference in tone, but I'm going to read you now my translation of somebody who writes in Standard Arabic. And this one I translate as the stranger. I carried the child's coffin on my shoulders and walked in the funeral of dreams. Children followed me like birds, my shadow refusing to shadow a little dead girl. I carried the small coffin and walked. I met familiar hearts and faces I don't remember. I walked and no one knew me. I'm like the pale dawn. Your withering eyes are like a green river. The sun mooned in the rising is like no one. Suitcases all look alike, and boarding passes, and airports, and lonely nights in the shadow of a strange moon. Postcards from friends all look alike, and winter showers in cafes and shops, and people's faces in the crowd. I alone am a stranger. I am not like anyone. So this was by Susanna Lewan, who I think spent a better part of her childhood in, she's Lebanese, but I think she spent a better part of her childhood in Egypt. And I didn't realize how the themes, how they would kind of fit together, but a lot of her poetry is about foreignness and just being abroad, and so that kind of really fits well with what Bart was reading. Okay, so I'll close this set with another one by Susanna Lewan. And this one I translate as like a drop of darkness. Why do any of us sleep alone? Why don't you turn the doorknob this very moment and bring the light in, sit at the edge of my bed, and bring back my insomnia, and coffee, and music of the soul? Why aren't you here like a cold star underneath the sheets? My heart is an orphan like a drop of darkness and light. I want you to surprise me and stir the door handle, the curtains, the coffee maker, the stereo. I have an abundance of silence, great ground coffee and crazy records. I know how much you like them. So I'll turn it back over to Bart.
I'm telling you, by the time this is over with, you'll be dizzy with all the strange sounds. As you might know, our bass player is not here tonight because he fell ill this afternoon. We're sorry about that, but as one solution we thought, originally I wasn't going to read any Dutch, but I will now just to make up for the bass. I think Darren would have played some pretty avant-garde bass anyway, and to my understanding, and maybe to foreign ears, Dutch at its best sounds like avant-garde, and at its worst like a grinder. So just to give you all a taste of what my Dutch sounds like, because just like English, there's so many varieties. I'll read a short paragraph from the next story, which I will then introduce in English and read in English also. Yeah, this is it. Just a little bit of Dutch to massage the ears. Maandag, iets voor 7. Het grof vuil staat al buiten. Toch vreemd hoe die zetels hier in der tijd gloednieuw binnengekomen zijn en geen 10 jaar daglicht gezien hebben. En daar ik nu te graai liggen op zo'n domme boeienwegel als dit. Er staan nog stoelen met vinylzettingen en nepgouden ornamentjes, een paar kapotte lampen en een van de zetels ligt scheef met de zijkant in een plas, want het heeft vannacht geregend. Hugo stapt van zijn fiets, kijkt rond zich heen, want hij is er niet gerust in. Hier in Vlaanderen staat er altijd wel iemand achter een gordijn de boel af te schieten. Maar je denkt, zwart, ik doe hier niets verkeerds mee. Hij heeft in geen jaren nog een deftige zetel in huis gehad. Jammer dat hij deze niet mee kan nemen, want hij heeft enkel een fiets voor het vervoer. Maar even op zo'n zetel kunnen zitten is al genoeg. Dus zet Hugo zijn fiets tegen een struik en trekt de rood plusje love seat uit de plas en zo goed als mogelijk plat op de kasseien van de parking. Mens, dat zit lekker, verzegt hij, het tintel in zijn stramme benen voelend, en hoe zot toch ook hier tegen de straatkant des ochtends vroeg op een fauteuil te kunnen zitten terwijl de mensen naar hun werk gaan. Wow, how did that sound? All right, this one is called Hugo and the Couch. Now, I have a couch at my house. It's an old, cranky couch. It's blue. You'll recognize it in the story. And yes, it's shored up because otherwise I would fall through it. But it came free with the rent, and I love it. And I love the blue of the couch for a certain reason. Like I said, some of this, well, most of this is really autobiographical, so at least that part is. As far as other, oh yeah, there's another chapter in this series which I didn't bring, and it describes a strange phenomenon in Flanders. Flanders countryside, imagine nothing going on, flat, boring, cows, more pigs than people, the church, the little grocery store, small houses, the butcher, and then land, and more land. And somewhere in the middle, a farmhouse, and the windows are blinded, and they're always blinded. And these places are called like Karma Club, or Tantra Club, or some other ridiculous name in the middle of the cow pasture there. And these are, of course, nightclubs where, you don't really want to know what's going on, but it goes on anyway, and it's very strange. And through my years traveling back there, because this didn't exist when I was a kid and lived there, this popped up in the last 20 years. I was very surprised at the cheapness of it all. And one day I came by a club like that, driving through Flanders, and it was burned out, and whatever was left over of the furniture was left at the curb in the middle of nowhere between the mud, and it was all these, kind of high city fake copper and plastic stuff, and now that's where this starts. Hugo and the Couch. This is the same thing I read in Dutch, but now in English, at least to start with. Monday, a little before 7. Dawn sits pale at the side of an ungodly morning. There's garbage at the curb. Strange how out of place these couches look. Their faded intimacy exposed to the stench of manure along this mute, deaf, and country road. There's also a set of cracked plastic chairs and fake gold ornaments and 2 broken lamps and dinged up brass, and one of the couches sits sideways in a puddle because it rained last night. Hugo stops the bike and looks over his shoulder and past the corners of his eyes, because in Flanders you never know. Someone's always peeking from behind a curtain, but screw them this time. Hugo hasn't seen a decent couch up close for many years. Too bad he can't just take this one. He's on the bike. He pulls the red striped one from the puddle and jerks and shoves it straight onto the cobblestones. He sits and sighs and feels his tingling legs and thinks how nice it is to sit on a couch at the side of the road and watch the people go to work. Hugo could never afford a couch like this. The one at home came with the rent. He shored it up with boards underneath so the thing wouldn't collapse. But it had the right color. A type of school blue he associated with science and skill and academics and all those things he couldn't possibly grasp with his lukewarm brain. Long nights on the blue couch would fill the gaps and calm his beating head. But the night was fading fast against the growing morning light, and within half an hour Hugo would be pierced by the eyes of muddy farmers going to work. They appeared in great numbers at the flat brow of the horizon, their huge tractor wheels slinging heavy mud over the dirt road, and steaming yellow piss drips from the manure trucks because they are fresh and overfull. Long pause. Long pause. "Go ahead, throw it on top of the truck," the farmer shouts over the roar of his tractor, pointing at the couch, which is now heavy with the puddle it soaked up while Hugo slept. Back and shoulders feel cold and wet, and the wind has picked up. tossing a couple of crows around the thickening sky, which is partly blocked from Hugo's view by the imposing mass of a farmer. And yes, from beyond the fields of peas and beans and baby carrots, a bolt of lightning strikes and the hardened mud cakes slowly lose their grip and turn to rivers of sludge under the pouring rain. And happy and dumb, Hugo sits in his new couch, the wobbly stack of tractor, bike, furniture, and human slowly advancing over the country road. And it rains contentment, and the smell of fresh manure gives new life to all. Amen.
So I'm going to read some more stuff from the original, but so when I was told that they wanted someone to read poetry for this event in translation, I thought it was great because this is really helping me for my thesis that I'm working on. While it's very different, I am doing a translation of a poem for my thesis, and so I thought this would be a great opportunity. And because Lebanese Arabic is what I speak at home with my family, I thought foolishly that it would lend itself more to translation than standard Arabic, which we don't really use very often. I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. Standard Arabic surprisingly translates better, at least from what I've tried to do, into English. And so I'm going to read now a poem in standard Arabic, and I hope you'll notice the difference, or at least kind of, if you can remember the first poem that I read in the original. You might notice a difference, you might not, but that's okay. I'd ask you again just to pay attention to the tone, and it's very short. It's called عصفور المقهى. مكانك في المقهى ليس خاليا. بعد رحيلك جاء عصفور وجلس في ركنك. أتأمله من بعيد مثلما كنت أتأملك وهو يدخن سيجارته يشرد بعينيه التائهتين في الدخان. And I translate this as the bird at the cafe. Your place at the cafe is not empty. After you left, a bird came and perched in your chair. I gaze at him from a distance, like I would gaze at you, and he smokes his cigarette. His stray eyes stare off through the smoke. So, I thought this was a very cute poem. She has all these very interesting images, which kind of, this is Suzanne Alaiwan, and this is one of her earlier poems, I think from the 90s or the 80s, I can't think right now, but yeah, it's pretty early, and she's a very prolific writer, and what I like about her is she posts all of her poetry online, and just kind of makes it available to anybody to read. So this next one is also by her, and I translate it as, I have brothers beyond the galaxies and friends on Earth. I am an angel floating in space, who has brothers beyond the galaxies and friends on Earth. A song for the end of an evening, and the start of night, that shakes the branches of the soul, chases away death, sings the silence. Hearing friends laughing reminds me to cry, reminds me of drawers you're not allowed to open as a child, and you work your tears to get your pleasure. Home is smoke blowing away in a wasteland. A wound, like an orange moon, is revealed by kindling embers. Water laughs alone in the deep. Friends laugh loudly, touching happiness. Lanterns and plants hang from the ceiling, like shadows of a faraway paradise. Icons of foreignness hang from my brow, like a light for the darkness where I spent my childhood. The river stopped its weeping, as if all the fish fell asleep. Do we fall asleep to the lulling of the wind? I'll close this set with just kind of a selection from this collection of books where there's not really a clear, it's just kind of a stream of poems with no break. So I did a selection from just the first section of that, and it's very short. And it's, the title of the whole work is Clutter of Words, and I think that kind of fits very perfectly. Who broke the moon's torch? What rain is this that puts out the stars with its shoe? Where is my window, walls? Who made my soul cry? And you, hand, where did you come from with such boldness? Brick. Nothing but rain on the window pane. my other face, its yellowed edge like an autumn person, on the two sidewalks, both the close one and the far. Nothing but rain on the miserable street, like a love that feet trample and put cigarettes out on its skin. Trees, bones, cold lanterns, their spirit sister, bald children in green aprons and bright corridors. Rain on the bus, and the umbrellas scurrying as if in a procession of plastic flowers. People crossing with age, clouds, smoke butterflies that barely manage a flutter before they dissipate. That's all I have, nothing but rain. Thank you.
You're having a nice time?
Yes.
Good. There's a little more. This is one before last, as far as I'm concerned. We were talking a little bit about translating before this all started. I was going to say a word about that. Like I said, I chiseled away 70% of what it originally was, which I'm very happy with. And then it became this distilled writing. But when you then again translate from your native language into your guest language, it's a whole different process, because you want to preserve a certain idiom, which is very important, is the flavor of your language, and yet you don't want to alienate your audience with it. And I wonder how much Flemishness, so to speak, seeps through these English translations. You all be the judge of that. I don't know. So this one's fun, tragic too. It's a little love story. I've known many men in my life that turned out to be what I call 40-year-old virgins, and this love story is about that. And it's amazing how many of those guys walk around in Flanders, because we were raised under the Catholic flag, and we were raised segregated, girls separate from boys until you're 18 years old, and then you're supposed to figure it all out. So, so we didn't. And schools got mixed up shortly after I left, fortunately. So, but we're still from that generation, so we didn't figure it out. And in going back, meeting my old friends in Europe, I often get confronted with a type of male that you just don't find around here. And the longer I live here, the more it's apparent and significant. Anyway, this. The guy in this story is at least 40, still sleeps in bed with his mother, and all that. Anyway, there we go. His name is Jack, and the title of this piece is Jack Gets Lucky. One more thing. There's quite a bit of mention of the word Gainsbourg. It's the name of Serge Gainsbourg, which you might have heard of. He was a great French singer, made it somewhat overseas here, as far as people knowing him. Anyway, that's all you need to know about that. And then you will hear the word chou, which appeared in the title of one of his great albums, L'homme à tête de chou. Chou means cabbage, the man with the cabbage head. Serge had just bought a sculpture called The Man with the Cabbage Head, which is a man sitting like a thinker, but with a cabbage head. Anyway, a fantastic album, very accomplished, and that's what that word refers to. Jack Gets Lucky. Mon Dieu, oh God, she sighs, her disbelief squeezing tight through the narrow pipe of her throat. Louise tries to find a proper way to not say what she really thinks. What am I supposed to do with this, Jack? It's all sugary twat. It's got no balls. Things were looking up for Jack, but like only tired old mothers could, Mama had urged him to come here, close to the other, imploring her grown-up son to finally go and meet that girl and take her to the movies. But rather than taking Louise to the movies, Jack had brought her some of his writing. Why sit in a dark theater staring at the screen? He'd rather look at her. Yeah, but see, Louise, Jack mutters, if I was to write it as I see it, people would think I'm a dirty dog. Do you know Gainsbourg? Louise asks from deep under her eyelashes. A life of booze and banging that bred rhyme and soul and warmed my blood in strange places. He grew from chic to shoe, unlike you with your sticky candy verses. That's what's really dirty, at least for a mutt your age. Jack didn't know what to say. He had no recourse for the ever-prevalent smell of his mother's mothballs, nor the assault of an outspoken woman's words, and certainly not if she told the truth. Why had his mother hooked him up with Fiery Louise? Fiery Louise, with her big toxic mouth and pretty scent. Just like the smell of wax one puts on cranky furniture to make its age shut up. Sweet and unforgiving at the same time. With the pages of caramel poetry tucked tightly in his soaking shoes, Jack walked home through the downpour. He had blown his nose in them because winter was coming and the writing wasn't any good anyway. Now snot covered his socks and candy birds, and he smelled Louise's perfume coming off the collar of his jacket. It warmed his blood and stirred him. He grew a bit of Gainsbourg. Louise would make a nice fit for a night or two. The splendor of her dress, the wayward line of her hips, the angle her jawbone would make while talking, underlining all the words she'd say, her flesh which gladly lets itself be touched. Did it ever lay down with Gainsbourg and make the master binge and belt his latest songs between her breasts? Only in my dreams, Jack chuckles while greeting the doorstep of the house. Perhaps I should just take Louise to the movies like Mom suggested. Upstairs, the lights are out and he unfolds an extra blanket for his mother. Her sleep, a peaceful flame around which moths play, burn and fall. Life was late and Jack felt lonely. His thoughts groped in the dark, beside the bed, through the veil of her thin fabric. They find Louise's thigh. To find her waiting here so firmly by the side of my mother's bed. Her perfume seducing my steps until I make up my mind and stumble down the stairs and grab my winter coat and go with her forever, never wanting to come back. And then Jack, jolted in the ink of the night, frantically searching a pencil, a marker, the wallpaper, meanwhile shouting out his thoughts to the echo of the dark as to not forget them before he told Louise, so they could lie down and he would sing between her breasts all the Gainsbourg songs he ever knew, spill cognac on her dress and make her ripe and willing, and he would be born again and his mother could finally die. And that's exactly why she had hooked him up with Louise. Mounawar, one more from you.
Okay. This is okay. Yeah, so we're really in sync today, actually. Because, no, seriously, because this next poem, which is going to be my last, also has a bunch of cultural references which I hesitated about pointing out, but I think it would do to kind of introduce with it. They're kind of the things that you would put as footnotes in a translation, but I can't really do that. So I'd just like to kind of have you visualize this kind of Bedouin culture of, there's a story in, there's kind of a common trope in Bedouin literature where, because they move around so much, there's this image of standing on the ruins of something, and that refers to when the beloved has moved away with her tribe or with her caravan, the lover kind of stands where the house used to be or where the settlement used to be and mourns the loss of the beloved. So there's this common image. And another thing you might hear is the name Al-Ma'arri, which is the name of a very famous poet, I'd say like about 8th century. So, but just very famous and controversial. Big criticizer of Islam and Islamic teaching. So, just a couple of things. And so this poem is also by Suzanne Aleiwan. It's from her most recent collection, and it's a rather long poem, so I'll just close with this. And I translate it as Darkling Glimmers. Here are countries crumbling like stale bread under the rain. It's all right. Our fingers are powerless, and our birds are thirsty. There are mouths in alarming numbers, full of teeth, fragile like homelands. Even if I'm still in exile tomorrow, Al-Ma'arri's verse is under our feet, and our maps have become paper boats, and laughter in a shroud. Your eyes have darkling glimmers, like halos of presents under the Christmas tree. My tears in my glass have more flood than a drowning person would ever need. Because of this excessive sea in the story, all that's between us is salt on the wound, the waning moon, skin against skin, floating corpses and flags in a blue that fluctuates in place. Water in such a story does not quench. I smile to the frosty morning, like to an old friend. I wear your necklace around my neck, like a bird, like half my likeness in the mirror. The night is like a horse sticking its hooves into my being. How do I measure how much I loved you with these extinguished fingertips? At the cafe where fates cross paths, there's the heart of a willow on the sidewalk. A bird's eyes reflect the street where we used to meet under yellow leaflets when we were sweethearts. I stand on the ruins, where the road is longer than my childhood and your scarf, and the crutch of the universe is an almond tree in bloom. Cars of the outskirts speed past me in the season of musical chairs. Paris is falling rain. A muddy night, erased streets. Charred trees in an excess of loneliness play cards to pass the time. If a hand could only hang a star on the tree of life. In the lobby of the dim hotel, you surprise me with your broken face. I find you sitting in an old chair, covered in reproachful perfume and furs, despairing and smiling, like a king sitting on a tear. Who would talk to the statues if it weren't for the birds on their shoulders? A room obscured like a cloud, a hallway that you light up. What use is a key in front of the wrong door? Your voice is my compass, your laugh loses me. A white door, a bed, and a window, and our masks on the floor. The angel of love is laughing. Matisse's nude women fill the air. Skin is deeper than bones. Whoever saw their skull in the mirror? Talk to me about us. Fear is our shadow on the abyss. Memory, a comma on a page. What hurts only hurts now. Trees are street teeth, and your hand are burnished. A glass and some salted nuts, and your hands are eyelets stripping love of the yellow scarf around its neck. But words are more than a window. Words are less than healing. The rain comes down in azure sheets. The outskirt moon has a bouquet of hail-pelted roses, and the lazy angel who dawdles all night from the St. Cloud forest to the square with the guillotine and the obelisk and the pigeons has the excuse of the rainy distance and legs made of paper. The tower that blooms on the grass without roots is for you. The shore more beautiful for its trees is for you, and the fiddlers scattered on blue rooftops like the snipers back home. The boats of light are for you, and Symphony No. 42, whose birds Mozart did not live to see. The moon in a sweet onion is for you, and so is the sun in a lover's bouquet. Songs that are locked away are for you until your face opens up, and the bird's nest is for you. You have the intuition of a river, and you wipe sad clouds off our faces with your sleeves. In the nearby square there are kings carved of stone. Their faces all look alike, smeared with bird droppings. How lonely he is in the night, that sun king, on a motionless horse with a pigeon on his head. I woke to the sound of rain, to see you, a tree shadowing a woodcutter. I started to say it was somewhere between crystal and frog, but my shadow began to cry. For fear of my tears falling in front of you like children, I said, I am a river. You have the pliability of colored clay. Between tiny fingers, whatever hand has you can make of you what it wants. A house, a flower pot, ceramic sadness with indistinct carvings. Like a tear on the world, like a shattered mirror under the eyelids of a kaleidoscope. Paris is falling rain. And there they go, falling together, tyrants and children, buried in snow on the street. Language is stone, language is suspended, and the stars are not a fireplace for shaky shelters on the border. All this night is in your eyes, and this is my share of the moon harvest, a poem in your burning and hesitant voice. I know you did not write it for me. Thank you.
All right. Okay. This is exactly for our last piece, which plays in France, Paris. This is really a meditation on French nighttime femininity. And Geneviève, who's from France, was kind enough to translate one of my pieces in French. So we'll be hearing that, and then I'll read it in English. And that will wrap up this translation theme here. Geneviève.
Thank you. I'm sure can I disappear. Anyway, so this piece is called Eva. Alright. Eva écrit des cartes à la lueur d'une ampoule de 25 watts, dont le fil électrique disparaît dans l'obscurité du plafond. Dans la cuisine, la seule fenêtre étroite et haute donne sur le flanc anonyme de la maison voisine, une bâtisse de 4 étages sur la périphérie de Paris. L'atmosphère est remplie de nuages désassemblés qui s'étirent dans le crépuscule. La pluie, encore cachée de la fatalité à venir, alors que tout dort encore. La bénédiction, c'est l'ampoule de 25 watts. Eva aime le matin qui, à sa montre, commence tout juste après minuit. Elle laisse son lit, souvent défait, quand elle se lève pour aller faire pipi. Puis elle revient, borde son nounours dans le lit encore tiède, se fait un café et sort dans l'allée pour fumer une cigarette. Elle vient ici chaque mois pour des longs week-ends. Un petit hôtel français, simple, du centre-ville, tenu par Madame Georges. Madame, d'abord austère et inabordable, a, au cours des années, accepté et aimé Eva. Elle connaît sa vie silencieuse dans la cuisine et ce nid chaleureux, au milieu de la nuit, lui manque lorsque Eva n'est pas là. Voulez-vous que je vous aide dans les escaliers? Eva lui demande. Non, non, j'y arriverai bien, ma petite. Madame répond dans un français grognon. Les restes d'une langue qu'elle parlait autrefois avec passion. Ses hanches sont friables comme de la craie. Les escaliers, difficiles à monter. Elle franchit les marches, une, à l'aide de sa canne. Son verbe maladroit, ainsi en harmonie avec cette maison détériorée. Cela provoque chez Eva la peur de perdre refuge quand Madame Georges ne sera plus de ce monde. Mais dans ce coin de ville, les pendules s'arrêtent quand il fait nuit et les marches des escaliers craquent sans cesse sous les pieds fatigués des personnes vieilles, nées vieilles, vieillissantes dans des maisons poussiéreuses et sans âge. Pas de plan pour demain, parce que demain est toujours parfait. Là, au cœur de cette âme, Eva trouve son inspiration. C'est ici que dans ses livres, les mots trouvent leur raison d'être. Et c'est là que Eva demeure dans les images de sa fascination. La longue table en bois est vide, à l'exception des affaires d'Eva. Du papier, 2 livres qu'elle lit de temps en temps, une boîte de crayons, un rouge, un bleu et un gris. Elle compose des lignes d'écriture sur le papier et prend des notes pendant qu'elle écoute la pluie qui tombe sur les vitres des fenêtres étroites. Dans une petite allée, une gouttière déborde, laissant des gouttes de pluie tomber avec insistance sur les couvercles des poubelles. Plic, ploc, flip, flip. Ses pieds ont froid et ses orteils qui cherchent les pantoufles sentent le carrelage glacé du sol de la cuisine. Un motif d'ombre blanche et noire, détails inachevés et débris d'un passé lointain. Être aux prises avec l'humour et la réalité des choses. Elle pose son crayon et s'affaisse dans sa chaise. Ses pieds ont enfin trouvé les pantoufles et ses orteils se blottissent contre leur doublure chaleureuse. Dehors, s'appuyant contre la porte arrière, elle respire profondément l'air humide et tient la feuille de papier dans la lumière que la fenêtre de la cuisine jette dans l'allée. De grosses gouttes d'eau recouvrent le texte, rendant le papier transparent. C'est même plus joli complètement trempé, pense Eva. Les mots s'effacent et deviennent un souvenir. Plic, ploc, flip, flip. La pluie fusille un gros trou dans le papier. Et il déchire et s'agrippe en lambeaux autour des doigts d'Eva. Chaque mot que je perds est un dont je dois me rappeler ou oublier. D'un geste lassé, elle secoue les restes du papier de ses doigts collants jusqu'à ce qu'il tombe et disparaît dans la nuit battante. Sous la lune matinale, la mousse sur le pavé est verte. Sur le ciment, les lignes de goudron s'éloignent, célèbrent leur marée noire dans ce temps mauvais.
Thanks, Geneviève. That could be a Gainsbourg song, you know.
It could be.
Here are
I
the
just have to smoke a lot and have the voice.
Unfortunately. Just to wrap it up, these are the subtitles to what you just heard. Eva. Eve, Eva, Eva. Eva is writing cards under the light of a 25-watt bulb, whose long thin wire disappears in the dark of the ceiling. The only window in the kitchen is narrow and tall and looks out on the anonymous sidewall of a neighboring house, a 5-story maison on the outskirts of Paris. The air is full of untogether clouds that pass in the semi-dark of the early morning, the rain still hidden from the cursing that is to follow because everything still sleeps. Benediction is a 25-watt light bulb. Eva loves the morning, which on her watch starts at the turn of midnight. She often leaves her bed cold when she gets up to pee. She then returns and tucks her teddy bear between the lukewarm sheets and makes herself a pot of coffee. Goes outside to smoke a cigarette in the alley. She comes here for long weekends every month, an easy French hotel far from the center of town, run by Madame Georges. Madame, stern and inaccessible at first, has come to like Eva through the years. She knows her silent life in the kitchen and misses that worn nest in the middle of the night when Eva is not there. Let me help you on those stairs, Eva offers. No, no, I'll manage, ma petite, Madame replies in cranky French, the leftovers from a language she once spoke with passion. Her hips are brittle like chalk, the staircase hard to walk. She negotiates the steps one by one with her walking stick. Its clumsy language so in line with this crippled house. It triggers Eva's fear of losing refuge when Madame will be no longer here. But the clock stops when it's night in this corner of town, and the steps on the stairwell creak forever under the tired feet of old people, born old, living old, in dusty homes without time. No plans for tomorrow, because tomorrow is always perfect. There, in the core of that soul, Eva finds her calling. It's where the words in her books find true resolve, and it's where she resides in the images of her fascination. The long wooden table is empty except for Eva's stuff. Some paper, 2 books she reads in bits and pieces, a stack of vintage postcards, and a flat tin box with pencils. A red, a blue, a grey. She writes strips of lines on a sheet of paper, makes notes while she listens to the rain that falls on the narrow window panes. A gutter floods and insistently drips on the lids of metal garbage cans in the narrow alley. Drip, drop, ding, dang, clitter, clatter. Her feet get cold and her toes reach for slippers, touching the cold towel kitchen floor. A pattern of white and black shadows, full of loose ends and remnants of a long past, struggling with the humor and the fact of it all. She puts down her grey pencil and sinks back into her chair. Her feet find their way to the slippers and her toes snuggle against the soft lining. Outside, leaning against the back door, she takes a deep breath of wet air and holds the sheet of paper in the light the kitchen window throws into the alley. Thick drops of rain cover the text, making the paper transparent. It's even prettier soaked, Eva thinks. The words wash away and become a memory. Drip, drip, drop, drip. The rain fires a hole in the paper and it tears wet and hangs ragged around Eva's fingers. Every word I lose is one I'll have to remember or forget. With a tired gesture, she shakes the paper remnants off her sticky fingers until they let go and wash away in the pouring rain. The moss on the concrete is green against the morning moon. The lines of tar in the cement celebrate their slick black in this nasty weather. All right, hope you enjoyed. Have a great night.
Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you Avid very much for hosting us. And please remember, Avid is a bookshop. It's an incredibly well curated bookshop, and even if you don't support them tonight, please come back and support Avid. Thank you all again. That was wonderful. Good night.